My parents made me work Black Friday while my sister partied with my paychecks. I cut ties and bought myself a life they can't enter. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and I've always been the responsible one, the quiet kid, the one who cleaned up after dinner without being asked, the one who turned the lights off, locked the doors, and never left dishes in the sink. My sister Melanie, she was the storm that never faced consequences. She got drunk at 15 and crashed my dad's car into a neighbor's mailbox. He didn't yell, he hugged her. My mom baked her favorite cookies to calm her nerves. I came home late from work, once 5 minutes late, because a customer lingered and got grounded for disrespect. "You're the boy," my dad said. "You need to be strong." "She's just sensitive," Mom added, rubbing Melanie's back while she cried over her shattered phone right before they ordered her a new one. I told myself this was just how families worked, that girls needed more emotional support, that maybe I was too quiet, that being good meant keeping the peace, even if the peace crushed me. But over time, the cracks grew deeper. Melanie didn't just get second chances, she got applause for failures. She failed a class. They blamed the teacher. I got an A-. They asked why it wasn't an A. I started shrinking, biting my tongue, apologizing for things I didn't even do, but nothing prepared me for what came later. The kind of betrayal that flips your entire reality upside down, because I thought the favoritism was just unfair parenting. I didn't realize it would cost me years of my life. And the first real blow? It came wrapped in a uniform under fluorescent lights on the coldest Black Friday of my life. But I'll get there first. You need to understand how far the rot really went. I got my first job when I was 16, retail, folding jeans in a store that blasted pop music and smelled like fake citrus and desperation. It wasn't glamorous, but I was proud. I wanted to save up for a used car so I didn't have to beg for rides anymore. I remember coming home with my first paycheck, $176.42. I held it like it was gold. My back hurt from stocking shelves, but it felt worth it, until my mom said, "Hand it over." I blinked. "What? You live under our roof. We'll manage your money responsibly," she said, already taking the envelope from my hands. I didn't want to argue. I was raised to think obedience meant love. At first, I believed them. They said it was going toward bills and food. I told myself I was helping the family. But then Melanie started showing up with new shoes, boutique dresses, a Kate Spade bag. One night, I overheard her telling a friend, "Yeah, I'm basically shopping with his paychecks. He doesn't even know." She laughed. That same mean little laugh she used when she stole my Halloween candy as a kid. I felt my stomach drop. My hard-earned hours, my sore feet, my skipped lunches at school repackaged as her luxury. When I confronted Mom, she said, "It's all family money. Don't be selfish." And when I brought it up to Dad, he grunted, "You'll understand when you're a parent." That night, I stared at the ceiling in my dark room, realizing something terrifying. It wasn't just that they didn't care. It was that they saw me as a resource, a worker, a walking wallet with no voice. And that was only the beginning. Thanksgiving week hit like a cold slap at my job. The manager asked who could cover the brutal Black Friday shift for AM to 11 PM. Before I could say a word, my mom chimed in from across the room. "He'll do it. He's used to long hours." I just stood there, stunned. No one asked me. No one cared. Melanie, meanwhile, was planning a weekend getaway with her friends' hotels, shopping, brunch spots, all funded by the same family account that bled for my hours. I worked that shift like a zombie. The store was chaos. People elbowing each other for half-price TVs, crying babies, blaring speakers. My feet felt like concrete blocks by noon. By 5 p.m., I couldn't feel my legs. By 11, I could barely see straight. When I got home, the house smelled like roasted turkey and warmth. Laughter echoed from the dining room. Melanie was tipsy, holding a wine glass and wearing a sequined dress I knew she didn't pay for. She looked at me and laughed. "Wow, you look like death. Yeah, worked 17 hours. She winked. "Thanks for the vacation fund." Everyone laughed like it was some cute inside joke. I laughed too because it was safer than crying. I didn't get a plate of leftovers. No one even asked how the shift went. I went to my room, peeled off my uniform, and sat on the floor in the dark, too tired to shower. I could still hear them laughing downstairs. That night, something shifted. A part of me, some soft, hopeful parts, started to die, because that wasn't just Thanksgiving. That was my role, my label, my fate, according to them. And I was starting to wonder if I'd ever be more than just the help. I came home from work the next week to find the living room trashed, empty pizza boxes, glitter in the carpet, red Solo cups on the windowsill. Melanie had thrown a party while I was pulling a double shift, and just like that, my entire paycheck was missing. I asked Mom if she'd seen the envelope I left in the kitchen drawer. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, we used that for bills," she said flatly. But something didn't add up, because that weekend, Melanie posted Instagram stories from a rooftop bar downtown, wearing a designer dress and sipping cocktails under twinkle lights. I recognized the boutique tag $240. I knew because I'd folded that exact dress at my store. I checked the bank app later that night and saw the transfer. My account had been drained the morning after I got paid. When I confronted Mom again, she snapped, "Stop acting like a victim. Everything we do is for this family." And when I dared to ask Melanie if she'd used my money, she smiled and said, "It's not your money. You wouldn't have it if Mom didn't drive you to that job in the first place." That was when I realized I was never really part of the family, the provider, the background character in their story. I sat on my bed that night, staring at the bank app, watching the zeros, and wondering how long I could keep doing this, how long I could let them strip me of my time, my energy, my future. Because it wasn't just money they were stealing anymore, it was me. Something cracked after that night. Not all at once, not loud, but like a wire in my chest finally snapped free. I waited until everyone was asleep, crept into the hallway, and took back the spare change Melanie had left in her glittery purse, $23. My own silent protest. The next morning, I opened a secret checking account. I used my friend Matt's address for the paperwork. He didn't ask questions, just gave me a quiet nod when I said, "I just need a place that's not ... here." From then on, every tip I made at work, every overtime bonus, every spare dollar from lunch money slipped into that account. I started skipping meals, bought dollar ramen packs, wore the same jeans until the knees frayed. I told everyone I was just saving up for something big. Meanwhile, Melanie posted stories in new outfits every week, tagging locations I'd never even been to. My parents praised her independent spirit. I smiled through it all. I even drove her to parties sometimes, played the good brother, laughed at her fake jokes. But inside, I was building something. Not just a savings account and escape plan, a version of me that didn't belong to them. I stopped talking about my dreams, stopped asking for anything. I gave them the version of me they wanted, quiet, useful, invisible. But the real me? He was starting to breathe again. And for the first time, I stopped waiting to be rescued. I was going to get out, not with a bang. Not yet, but with a whisper. I turned 18 on a cold Wednesday. I had requested the day off 2 weeks in advance, my first real birthday request in years. I had no party planned, no big expectations. I just wanted a quiet day to myself, maybe sleep in, maybe breathe. But at 6 a.m., my mom barged into my room. "You're needed at work today. They're short-staffed. We told them you'd cover asterisk." I sat up, disoriented. It's my birthday." She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. It's just another day. You'll get over it." No one even said happy birthday. Not her. Not Dad. Not Melanie, who was already out getting a manicure and posting self-care queen selfies on Instagram at work. The register froze 3 times. Customers cursed at me, and I had to clean up a kid's vomit in aisle 4. I kept telling myself, it's fine. Just get through the day. When I got home, the lights were off. I thought maybe they'd surprise me. But no, they were out at dinner. A girls' night at Melanie's favorite sushi place. I saw the check later, $142, paid with the emergency credit card I had to co-sign for in the kitchen. On the table was a receipt from a bakery. Chocolate cake, my favorite. But the name on the tag, Melanie, turns out they bought her a spa package and cake just because she's been so stressed lately. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't eat. Didn't yell. I just went to my room and quietly added another $50 into my hidden account. Guess some people get candles. I got clarity, and that was more valuable than anything they could have. bought me, when I got accepted to a state university. With a partial scholarship, I felt like I could finally breathe for the first time in years. I remember sitting in the hallway, reading the acceptance letter 3 times just to make sure it was real. Computer science, my dream major. The one thing I'd held on to while folding clothes for rude customers and pretending my family's praise wasn't something I'd stopped earning years ago. I walked into the living room with the letter in my shaking hands. "I got in," I said, smiling. "I'm going to college." Silence. Then my mom frowned like I'd told her I wrecked her car. "But who's going to help with bills now?" Dad chimed in, not looking up from his phone. "We didn't raise you to be ungrateful. Running off to chase some computer fantasy while we struggle here." Struggle. Melanie had just posted a boomerang from a rooftop brunch with a caption that read, "Mimosas and main character energy." I looked down at the letter and felt my joy curdle into shame. "I can still help. I can work weekends." Mom cut me off. "We've already sacrificed so much for you. You should be contributing, not running away." And there it was again. That word, running. Like trying to grow was some kind of betrayal. I went back to my room and closed the door quietly. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at my bag, still half packed under my bed, and thought, they don't want a son. They want an employee. And I was finally done being on their payroll. A few nights after the college fallout, Melanie stumbled into the house drunk. Again, it was 2 a.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling job listings and calculating tuition gaps. She dropped her heels at the door and slurred, "Why are you always up like a ghost?" I didn't answer. I was too tired, too bitter. She poured herself orange juice straight from the carton, sat across from me, and stared. "You know I didn't ask for all this, right?" I looked up. "What?" She laughed, but it came out cracked. "The money? The attention? The golden child thing? I didn't ask them to give me your checks." My blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" She pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages, then turned the screen toward me. Texts from my mom. "Tell him you need it for school stuff. Guilt him if he resists. He won't fight you. He's too soft." I stared at the words, my heart pounding in my throat. Melanie shrugged, suddenly sober. "It's not about you. It never was. You were just useful." That word useful hit me like a slap. She got up wobbling and added, "You always act like you're so strong. But you let them do this. You never stopped them." She wasn't wrong. I watched her stumble off to bed, her silhouette flickering in the hallway light, and felt something snap in me. Not anger. Not sadness, clarity. They weren't just taking advantage. They were planning it, coordinating it. And the worst part, they knew I'd keep letting them. But that night, for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt done. The week before Christmas, I worked 3 double shifts back to back. The store was short-staffed, and I didn't dare say no, not with tuition hanging over me like a cloud. On the 3rd night, around 10 p.m., I was organizing returns in the back when the room started to spin. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder than usual. My knees buckled. My vision blurred. I stumbled into the staff closet and collapsed behind a stack of cardboard boxes. Cold concrete pressed against my cheek. I couldn't move. My chest felt tight. My fingers were tingling. I thought I was dying. A coworker named Trish found me. She sat next to me, handed me a bottle of water, and said gently, "You ever think about quitting?" I shook my head, barely able to speak. "Can't. Family needs me." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" After my shift, I sat on a bench outside in the freezing wind, waiting for the bus. I was too dizzy to drive. I texted my mom, "I think I need help." I collapsed at work. Her reply came 2 minutes later. "Stop being dramatic. We all work." That was it. No call, no ride, no concern. Meanwhile, Melanie was on a beach in the Bahamas. Her story said, "I needed this." Self-care vibes. I stared at her post, numb. And right there, sitting in the cold with salt from my tears drying on my face, I realized I'd hit bottom. Not just physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I had nothing left to give them. And that meant it was time to finally give something back to myself. 2 weeks later, I got the acceptance packet from the university. Not just a letter and actual thick envelope with forms, housing options, and orientation info. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding it like a fragile bird. Then I packed in silence. I didn't tell anyone, didn't ask for permission. I folded shirts like secrets, zipped up my laptop, and left my old phone on the dresser. That phone had so many strings attached to it: group chats, guilt texts, surveillance disguised as checking in. I wasn't bringing it with me. I wrote a note. I'm leaving. Not running, just choosing me this time. I left it on the fridge, right next to Melanie's list of things to pick up with his next paycheck. Then I walked out the door. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I got into my car, a junker I'd bought quietly off Craigslist for $800, cash, and drove halfway to campus. My phone started blowing up. Calls from Mom, missed calls from Dad, texts from Melanie. Seriously, you're making a scene. What are you trying to prove? You'll come crawling back. I pulled over, deleted their numbers, blocked them all. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from freedom. I wasn't just leaving home. Was cutting ties with the version of me that tolerated being used. And even though I was scared, even though I had no idea what came next, I knew this. Whatever it was, it would finally belong to me. My first night on campus felt unreal. My dorm room was tiny, just a mattress on a metal frame, a flickering desk lamp, and walls so thin I could hear someone playing guitar badly down the hall. But it was mine. Every square inch of it belonged to me in a way nothing ever had. I remember sitting cross-legged on the mattress, eating chicken-flavored ramen straight from the pot because I didn't own a bowl yet. The window was cracked open, letting in cold air that smelled like pine and distant rain. For the first time, I breathed without feeling like someone was waiting to take something from me. Classes were tough. I spent hours in the computer lab, coding until my eyes burned. On weekends, I worked at the campus help desk, fixing laptops and explaining Wi-Fi passwords to freshmen who couldn't connect their devices. Even when I was exhausted, I loved it. Every moment felt earned. No one was checking my hours. No one was draining my account. No one was using my effort like oxygen they were entitled to. One night, my professor, Dr. Patel, stopped me after class. "You have potential," she said, tapping my project report. I blinked me. "Yes, you. Don't act surprised. Apply for the paid internship I emailed you about. You're competitive." Her words felt like someone pouring warm light into the hollow places inside me. Nobody had ever told me I was good at something without adding a condition or comparison. I applied that night, hands shaking, heart pounding. I didn't tell anyone, not even Matt. A week later, I got an email. "Congratulations, you've been selected." I sat there staring at the screen as the room shimmered slightly, and I realized I was crying not from pain this time, but from the realization that I was finally becoming someone new, someone whole. But I didn't know yet that my past wasn't done with me, not even close. I was 24 and finally living like I'd always dreamed, steadily, on my own terms. I had a remote tech job, a tiny studio apartment that smelled like burnt coffee and new beginnings, and a bank account I didn't have to explain to anyone. I wasn't rich, but I was at peace. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message request. "Melanie wants to connect." My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen her name in years. I clicked the message. "Hey, Mom and Dad are having a rough time. Can we talk?" No hi, no how, have you been? Just straight to the ask.I, ignored it. 3 days later, a new message popped up, this time with a photo. My dad, in a hospital bed. Mom sitting beside him, looking aged and weary. They're not doing well. Families should stick together. For a moment, I felt something in my chest flicker. Guilt, maybe, or muscle memory. But then, I made the mistake of checking her Instagram, new car, designer bag. A weekend trip to Miami tagged #selfmade. And I realized this wasn't about family. It never was. It was about resources. Again, I didn't reply. I archived the chat and turned off notifications. But that night, I had a dreamy back in the old house, trapped behind the closet door while they laughed and counted my money outside. I woke up in a sweat, heart racing. This was their cycle crush. Drain, discard. And now that I was thriving, they were trying to pull me back in. But this time, I had something stronger than fear. I had distance, and I wasn't going to let them close that gap again. 2 weeks later, a plain white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address, just my name, written in my mom's delicate handwriting, the same handwriting that used to label my lunchbox in elementary school. I stood there holding it like it might explode. Inside was a 3-page letter, front and back. It started with, "We miss our son. Melanie's changed. Please come home." They wrote about how the house needed repairs, how things hadn't been the same since I left, how Dad's health was declining, how Mom had been losing sleep over me. And then, buried halfway through the second page, came the real ask. If there's any way you can help financially or otherwise, it would mean so much. Just until we get back on our feet, there it was. The real reason, still coated in guilt, wrapped in sentiment. But as sharp and transactional as ever, they didn't want me. They wanted access. Again, I sat at my tiny kitchen table, the afternoon sun cutting through the blinds, striping the letter like prison bars. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared at it, letting the silence say what words couldn't, because what they never understood, what they still didn't get, was that I didn't leave out of anger. I left to survive, and no amount of nostalgia could erase what they'd taken. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in a shoebox in my closet. Not to save it, just to remind myself. Some people say, closure comes from conversation. But mine came from finally choosing silence. A year after that letter, I closed on a small condo. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, a creaky balcony, and cabinets that needed new handles. But it was mine. Every square foot was paid for with money they never touched. I walked through the empty space, with my palms out like I was blessing its bare walls. Echoing footsteps, the scent of new paint still lingering in the air. No grand reveal, no social media flex. Just me, a Bluetooth speaker, and a bag of takeout from the same noodle shop I used to pass on campus. I sat on the floor that first night, back against the wall, eating lo mein from the carton and watching the city lights blink through my window like quiet applause. The next morning, I bought a keyboard, the first thing I'd bought just because I wanted it. I hadn't played since I was 17. My old one had been sold for groceries when Melanie wanted money for a spring break trip. As my fingers moved across the keys again, stiff and clumsy, I felt something loosen inside me. Like a thread I'd been holding too tightly finally letting go. I didn't miss them. Not even a little. Not their noise. Not their chaos. Not their guilt-trapped obligations. I missed who I could have been if they'd ever just loved me without strings. But here's the thing now. I get to become him anyway. On my own terms, and this home this quiet, imperfect. Beautiful spaces, one they'll never be invited into. Not because I hate them, but because I finally love myself more. Every now and then, someone from the past reaches out. A cousin, an old neighbor. Even Matt once forwarded me a message from my dad, saying, "Tell him we still think of him. Family is forever." But here's the thing no one ever wants to admit. Family isn't blood. It's behavior. You don't get to bleed someone dry and then demand loyalty. You don't get to manipulate, guilt, and discard someone for years, then call it love. I don't hate them. I don't even think about them most days. But I do remember the version of me that used to beg for scraps of affection. The kid who thought being useful was the only way to earn love. That version of me is buried now. Not with bitterness. With peace, I have boundaries now. Thick, tall, and quiet. I don't respond to messages that start with guilt. I don't explain my success to people who didn't help build it. A part of me wonders if they ever sit in that same house and think, we lost him. But if they do, I hope they understand something. They didn't lose me because I changed. They lost me because I finally understood I never had to earn what they should have given freely. And I stopped letting being a good son mean being their emotional punching bag. Now, I spend weekends hiking. I cook dinner for myself. I play piano late into the night. Not for anyone else, just to hear something beautiful fill a room I finally feel safe in. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see a doormat anymore. I see a man who walked away and never looked back. If you've ever felt like love in your family was a transaction, like your worth depended on how much you gave, how quiet you stayed, or how useful you want you to hear this, you are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not the villain. You're just someone who was taught to survive in a system that benefited from your silence. I used to think that leaving would make me cruel, that choosing myself meant betraying them. But the real betrayal It was what they did every time I asked for kindness and got conditions instead. Every time I said, I'm tired, and they said, work harder. Every time I gave, and they took without even looking back. The freedom I have now isn't loud. It's not revenge. It's peace. It's cooking dinner without anxiety, sleeping through the night without wondering what I did wrong, spending money I earned on things I love without guilt. It's building a life they don't get to enter, not out of spite, but out of protection. If you're still stuck in that cycle, still being drained, dismissed, I want you to know you're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose silence. You're allowed to build boundaries so high that not even their guilt can climb them. You don't have to prove your pain. You don't need their permission to be free. You just need to believe. Maybe for the first time that your life belongs to you, because once you do, they lose the power, and you get to start over, exactly like I did.